در این قسمت از برنامه خواهشمندیم از سمیرا علیزاده که به جایگاه تشریف آورده و مقاله ای را که تدارک دیده است به سمت شما عزیزان برساند. سمیرا علیزاده.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am honored to welcome you all to this gathering and happy Eid al-Fitr. May Allah accept our fasting, prayers and guidance. Today I am to delve into the remarkable life and legacy of Baba Mazari, a champion of the Hazara people, and explore the profound impact he had on their lives. Baba Mazari's contributions to the Hazara people are multifaceted and far-reaching as a leader, a politician and a humanitarian. He dedicated his life to promoting the rights, dignity and well-being of the Hazara community. Advocacy for Hazara rights. One of Mazari's most significant service to the Hazara people was his unwavering advocacy for their rights. For centuries, the Hazara people had faced persecution, marginalization and exclusion from mainstream Afghan society. Mazari's leadership helped bring attention to those injustices and fought tirelessly for the Hazaras' inclusion in Afghanistan's political, social, and economic fabric. Promoting education and social justice. Mazari recognized the transformative power of education in empowering marginalized communities. He established schools, educational institutions, and training programs to equip Hazara youth with these skills and knowledge necessary to participate fully in Afghan society. By promoting education, Mazari helped break the cycle of poverty and ignorance that had held the Hazaras back for so long. Empowering women. Mazari was a pioneering advocate for women's rights in Afghanistan. He believed that women's empowerment was an essential to the development and progress of the Hazara community. Mazari supported activities that promoted women's education, healthcare, and economic participation, helping to challenge traditional patriarchal norms and promote greater gender equality. In humanitarian work, throughout his life, Mazari was committed to providing humanitarian assistance to those in need. He established internally displaced people and vulnerable communities affected by conflict, poverty, and natural disasters. Mazari humanitarian work helped alleviate suffering, promoted dignity, and saved countless lives. So how can the Hazara people repay Baba Mazari's kindness? The first and important thing, education and capacity building. Establish educational institutions, scholarships, and training programs that promoted skills development, critical thinking, and leadership. Social justice and advocacy. Continue Mazari's advocacy work by promoting social justice, human rights, and equality for all Afghans, particularly the Hazara community. In empowering women and girls, supporting activities that promote women's education, healthcare, economic participation, and social empowerment. In humanitarian work, establish organizations that provide humanitarian assistance to vulnerable communities, refugees, and internally displaced persons. Cultural persuasion. Persuade Hazara culture, language, and tradition by promoting cultural events, art, literature, and music. Community development. Support community development projects that promote economic growth, infrastructure development, and social cohesion. The last and important one is leadership development. Identify and support emerging leaders who embody Mazari's values and vision, ensuring the continuation of his legacy. So, in conclusion, Baba Mazari's self-dedication to the Hazara people has left an indelible mark on their lives. His legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of advocacy, education, social justice, and humanitarian work. By continuing his work and promoting his values, the Hazara people can repay Mazari's kindness and ensure his legacy endures for generations to come. از حضور پشتکار محترم بزرگان و سروران این مجلس که بالاترین عنایت خاص از خوانندگوش قرار
ستم‌های چند قرن بر مردم افغانستان پایان یابد و جامعه‌ای به وجود آید که در آن از تبعیض، برترطلبی، تفاخر و افزونخواهی خبری نباشد. رهبر شهید عبدالعلی مزاری. اکنون دعوت به عمل می‌آید از خانم شکوفه طاهری که به جایگاه تشریف آورده و سخنان خویش را ارائه فرماید. شکوفه.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. با سلام و درود بر روان رهبر شهید علی عبدالمزاری و درود بر روح شهدای مردم ما و قربانیان نسل کشی هزاران و آن نسل کشی که هنوز ادامه دارد و هنوز هم از ما مردم ما قربانی میگیرد. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very much a privilege to be amongst you. I'm very much honored to be amongst respected community leaders, special guests, on this very important day, on the 30th birthday of Baba Mazari. Who is Baba Mazari? You know, we as a community define Baba Mazari as the epitome of principles that we each have carried in our own way close to heart in our life, throughout our life, that has influenced the work that we do, the work that we have done, and the work that we continue to do, and the work and the principles that should guide us into the future. I came to Australia in 2006, so it's been close to 20 years that I've been living in Australia. One of the very first glimpses of Mazari that we were given were conversations in our houses, in our homes, by our fathers of the tales and the events that happened in the 90s and how justice was fought for and how the Hazara resistance out of oppression was led by Baba Mazari. There it encapsulated and it cemented the idea that justice was not something that was given to us, that it was fought for. Therefore, tonight, I've been asked to speak on the themes of identity and Baba Mazari's principles. Baba Mazari set many principles that have become guiding light for our community forward, even if we have geographically moved a distance away from Afghanistan, which is the center and the roots of our people. The most important principle that I take away from Baba Mazari is the fact that he was principled and he was wholly focused on the benefits of people. I would like to welcome just there as well to the audience. It's very much an honor to have you here. We'll continue from here. So the guiding principle that he laid really important personally to me, but I'm sure to most of our community members, was that he worked for people, he dedicated his whole life for people. And when as a young girl, the dedication and the selflessness was part and parcel to how we grew up and how we chose our careers and how we chose the work that we did, how we studied and how we envisioned the future, regardless of the distance between our home and our lands, traditional lands in Australia. So to that end, identity is malleable, it is accommodative and it's supposed to be accommodative. Our people has been historically persecuted, oppressed and marginalized, especially since 1890s after the reign of Abdul Rahman, who led a massacre which got rid of most of the population of Hazaras. Since then, Hazaras have suffered in the hands of the preceding governments, oppression, marginalization, inferiority, and that has become an identity for our people to accept a sense of victimhood in the context that they're in. However, Baba Mazari came and changed that. We endured that identity that was imposed on us to be victims and marginalized, but Baba Mazari changed the course of history. If Baba Mazari was not able to get the unity and the vision that he had for Hazara people to simply be part of the system, system that they were in, be part of the country and be accepted as legitimate people of the land that they owned. But he left an important legacy for us to carry. And so the identity of exclusion, suppression, deprivation, and victimhood while living in Australia has to change. And I think in Australia, given the privileges that we have to be part of the system, to have voting rights, to be residents of this country, to work, and to be self-reliant, we can challenge the identity that was imposed on us to be victims and dependents and only beneficiary of the system. And so our identity is not just victimhood or dependence in Australia. And throughout my activism for refugee policies, back when temporary visas was introduced in 2014, I remember I was in my very first years of university trying to understand and make sense of what I was doing to help people. The temporary nature of the regime towards refugees who had taken all risks to travel to Australia was something that my father had experienced, and I'm sure so many of you have experienced in the audience. And so it was personal relatability to be challenged and to have the vision and the motivation to be able to change that. Why? Because the people inside of the community were disconnected from the system. And so people with articulation and connection and communication with the systems of power, with decision makers, I as such felt a deep sense of responsibility to pursue refugee advocacy. And I then followed the example of Bobbe Mazari to be selfless, to not expect a reward, to not expect anything in return, but to fight for the vulnerable. And the closest vulnerable in our community is and was the refugee communities who were to face a decade-long limbo at that time. So that is the legacy that I carried, and that is the legacy that we carry and community of activists carry in Australia. According to my observation, we as a community, yes, we do face challenges, there are also solutions. And I think we need to be honest about the challenges that we face and the flaws that we have. As an emerging diaspora community, we are the most prominent Hazara diaspora in Australia. And so we hold power, not just voting powers, but we have power in terms of resources, we have power in terms of connection to the systems of influence for our people back in Afghanistan. So with that power and privilege comes responsibility. And so we collectively understand that we have suffered collective low self-esteem as a community due to genocide, due to oppression, and due to marginalization in our own country. So to transition, to challenge the system that we were in, there have been multiple efforts made to advocate for the rights of refugees, for the rights of Hazaras, for the rights of marginalized inside our communities with politicians. One of the many flaws has been that it has been really reinventing the wheel. So yes, we meet politicians and we talk to them about our challenges, but never have we treated politicians as collaborators. We have asked them to give us solutions rather than offering solutions. And I think there has to be a shift in terms of how we approach the systems of power. And that can happen along the lifetime of a community that is just emerging and recognizing a new system of power. In the past, communities have advocated for change through different community organizations. However, there is a difference or contrast between performative advocacy and advocacy that is based on actual goal of achieving a change for people. And that has been one of the many challenges inside the community, is that performative is when it feels like a feel-good exercise and you feel like you're doing something useful. And it's as if it's a dopamine hit and that finishes. And that has been actually a very risky exercise with our community, is that it has created advocacy fatigue. People do not expect a change because we don't tend to connect properly with the system. We don't have a culture of, we haven't really showed a culture of follow-up with our politicians because our relationship with the system, from our home country has been so traumatized. We need a change in perception, therefore. And so, for us to redefine ourselves, we also need to change that relationship, and we have to build a long-term relationship. I had an experience of being an advisory panel member to the government back in 2021, and there was the most profound experience of actually self-reliant and collaboration with actual decision makers, and that was the government back then. When the evacuation happened for Afghanistan after the Taliban takeover, the government gave community members, and as part of the advisory panel, there was Dr. Alireza as well, and Dr. Rezai as well. That was profound because that experience changed my perceptions with the system of power and how influential communities themselves can be when they actually step up and lead the way and offer solutions to the government. So that's, as a result of many discussions, we had follow-up every 2 weeks, we had meetings with the ministers every 2 weeks, and they would listen and they would take notes. Alison Larkin at the time was the Coordinator General for Migrant Services, and she was the big boss who was listening to the grievances of the panel members and their needs. There we articulated the needs for communities to be self-reliant, that they're not just beneficiaries, that they're resilient people who want to help their own people. So traditionally you have settlement services like SSI, STARS, CMRC, and other traditional settlement service providers. But there we try to articulate that communities are not just beneficiaries. Communities are not just users, so we should stop seeing them like that. They can be given resources to strengthen their systems, to strengthen the structures that they have inside of their community, and they should be allowed an opportunity. The decision maker at the time, obviously, one of the influential people in the department was Alison Larkin, who then listened very carefully and did her research that yes, communities themselves, yes, they have had past traumatic experiences, they have been from refugee backgrounds, but there has been, there needs to be an opportunity for these communities to lead themselves. So a grant of almost $29 million was issued for just the settlement of people from refugees from Afghanistan for the course of until 2026 for the course of 4 years, and millions were allocated to just communities as directly where they applied for funding. And this has been transformation in itself. And if you look at the history of settlement and funding and resourcing the communities themselves and empowering them, never in the history of settlement services or providing funding has this sort of resources been provided to communities themselves. So that is a shift towards becoming self-determined, self-reliant, and I think that there is now a precedence for the government to see us as self-reliant, as communities who have the potential to lead themselves, and to people who are not just victims. And time again, we have proved that Hazara communities have been one of the most entrepreneurial communities out of all the migrant communities. They have been researched time and time again by very reputable researchers as well as universities into the employment, into the entrepreneurial potential of Hazara people inside Australia. And one was done, and if anybody's interested, they can look up at the UTS website. There is a very comprehensive report about the boat arrivals and their entrepreneurial skills. Why? Because yes, risk-taking was inherently, Hazaras have been risk-takers because they have faced an immense sense of oppression in Afghanistan. And so taking a risk to jump on a boat and come to Australia, and yes, nobody's saying that is the right way to do it, but if they have taken the risk to come here, opening a business and developing their own employment is a necessary risk. And so the risk-taking mentality amongst the Hazaras have been a defining factor for our communities here. So I want to say that the identity is malleable. It is something that changes, and we don't have to stick this to a status of victimhood. And so I take this opportunity, the 30th Maritime of Baba Mazari, to say that this is the vision that Baba Mazari had for our communities: to be self-reliant, to be productive members of a community. And unfortunately, with Afghanistan, that dream was not realized, but we hold that dear to our heart. What must we do now as a community? It's election times. Election is on 3rd of May. As a community, to define our place in the system, we must recognize that we have a privilege here, the privilege of voting. Politicians are not just guests in our events, they are collaborators, and we must treat them like that. That they will have to listen to us when we have an ask or grievance inside the community. As Hazara diaspora, what are we doing to realize our advocacy goals in this 1 month? The election is exactly 1 month away from now. There's really no plan. So then, how do we define ourselves in accordance to the vision of Baba Mazari? Baba Mazari fought so hard to instill the system of federalism in Australia. An ideal system that we have in Australia is what Baba Mazari envisioned. But yet, we're in Australia, established, very well resourced, but we're not really doing anything, any sort of national coordination to participate politically in the interest of our people. So I would like to conclude by saying that one of the most important principles that we must remember about Baba Mazari is that he was a man of action, that he did not just talk, he walked the walk. And so yes, we might have a lot of issues, but if we start walking steadily but consistently with grit, with a long-term vision, we are able to realize the vision of Mazari inside a different home. Because this is our adopted home, but we must adopt it as if this is our home. Australia is a nation of migrants. It is a nation of migrants. 40,000 years ago, Aboriginal people were the first people of this nation. And everybody, over the course of the history, in the last 200 years, have migrated. So we must change and shift our vision to realizing that we are part and parcel and we are important members of this country, that this country is indeed our home. And Baba Mazari would be in alignment with that and his vision. I would like to thank you for your time, and I hope that we keep up the spirit and the very principles that Baba Mazari